No one in the city knew her name. They saw her, yes. They saw the thin girl with tangled dark hair and worn shoes 2 sizes too big. They saw her sitting on the cold pavement near the busy intersection where luxury cars waited at the traffic light. They saw her curled up at night beside a flickering street lamp, her small body wrapped in a faded blanket that had long forgotten what warmth felt like. But they did not know her. Her name was Amara. Amara was 12 years old, though hunger and hardship had made her eyes older. She had learned early that the world was not kind to children without homes. People passed her by every day, men in expensive suits, women in silk dresses, teenagers laughing with phones in their hands. Sometimes they looked at her with pity, sometimes with annoyance. Most times, they did not look at all. She had stopped expecting them to. But Amara was not alone. Beside her, curled tightly under the same blanket, was a boy even smaller than she was. His name was Leo. Leo was only 6. He wasn't her brother. They didn't share blood. They shared something stronger, survival. Amara had found him 3 months ago behind a bakery, crying beside a pile of trash bags. His face was streaked with dirt and tears, and his tiny hands clutched his stomach. "I'm hungry," he had whispered. Amara knew that kind of hunger, the kind that didn't just live in your stomach, but in your bones. She had given him half of the bread someone had thrown away earlier that day. She had watched him eat it slowly, carefully, as if afraid it would disappear. From that moment on, they stayed together. She protected him. She taught him how to find food in safe places, how to avoid cruel people, how to sleep lightly so they could wake quickly if danger came. At night, when Leo cried quietly for his mother, Amara would hold his hand. "I'm here," she would whisper. She didn't know where his mother was. Leo didn't either. All he knew was that one day, she was gone. So Amara became his family. And family meant never leaving. One cold morning, the wind cut through their blanket like a blade. Leo shivered violently beside her. "Amara," he whispered weakly, "I'm cold." She wrapped her arms around him tighter, trying to give him her warmth. "I know," she said softly. But she had nothing else to give. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. Leo came first. Always. That day, she decided she had to try harder. She stood at the busy intersection, watching the cars stop and go. Most drivers ignored her. Some waved her away angrily. A few rolled up their windows as if she carried something contagious. Then she saw it. A long black car, polished so perfectly it reflected the sky itself. It stopped at the light. Inside sat a man in a dark suit. He looked older, maybe in his 50s. His hair was touched with grey, and his face carried lines of experience. But his eyes looked tired. Amara hesitated. People like him never helped people like her. Still, she stepped forward slowly. Leo watched from the sidewalk, his small face pale. Amara reached the car window and raised her hand weakly. She didn't knock. She didn't beg. She simply stood there. The man turned his head. For a moment, their eyes met. Amara saw something unexpected. Not annoyance. Not disgust. But curiosity. The light was still red. Her heart pounded. She didn't know why, but something inside her told her this moment mattered. She lifted her hand and pointed gently behind her, toward Leo. Her voice trembled, but she forced the words out. "This boy lives in the street with me." The man froze. His eyes moved past her, landing on Leo's fragile figure wrapped in the torn blanket. Time seemed to stop. The sounds of the city faded. The light turned green. Cars behind him honked impatiently. But he didn't move. He kept staring at the boy. And something inside him began to break. Amara didn't know it yet. But that single sentence was about to change all 3 of their lives forever. His name was Daniel Hartwell. He was one of the richest men in the city. He owned towers that scraped the sky and companies that employed thousands. People respected him, feared him, admired him. But no one truly knew him. Because behind the wealth, behind the tailored suits and powerful reputation, Daniel carried a silence that money could not fill. He had once had a family. A wife who laughed easily. A son who loved toy cars and chocolate ice cream. But 10 years ago, everything had been taken from him. A car accident. Rain. A drunk driver. One moment they were alive. The next moment, they were gone. Daniel had survived. Sometimes, he wished he hadn't. Since that day, his life became routine. Work, meetings, numbers, silence. He built more, earned more, became more powerful. But inside, he became less human. Until now. Until he saw the boy. Leo's small body trembled as he clutched the blanket. His cheeks were hollow, his lips pale. Daniel's chest tightened painfully. He saw his son. Not in face, but in fragility. He rolled down the window slowly. Amara stepped back, unsure. "What's his name?" Daniel asked quietly. "Leo," she answered. "And you?" "Amara." Her voice carried strength beyond her years. Daniel looked at her carefully. She stood protectively, slightly in front of Leo, as if shielding him from the world. "Where are your parents?" He asked gently. Amara lowered her eyes. "Gone." The word was simple, but it carried everything. Daniel understood that word. Gone. He swallowed hard. Behind him, cars honked again. But he didn't care. He opened the car door and stepped out. His driver stared in shock. "Sir, you'll be late." Daniel ignored him. He walked toward Leo slowly, crouching down so he wouldn't seem frightening. Leo shrank back slightly, hiding behind Amara. "It's okay," Amara whispered to him. Daniel's voice was soft. "Are you hungry?" Leo nodded. That single nod shattered whatever walls Daniel still had, because he remembered that hunger. Not of the body, but of helplessness. He stood up. "Wait here," he said. He walked to a nearby cafe. People stared at him in confusion. A billionaire buying food himself was not something they expected. He returned minutes later with 2 warm meals and hot chocolate. Leo stared at the food like it was magic. Amara hesitated. "For us?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Yes." Leo ate first. Amara watched him, making sure he was okay. She only ate after he did. Daniel noticed. She always put him first. Always. Something inside Daniel shifted. He had spent years building empires. But this girl, this child, had built something far greater. Love. He sat beside them on the cold pavement. For the first time in 10 years, Daniel Hartwell didn't feel like a billionaire. He felt like a human being. And he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He could not walk away from them. Not now. Not ever. The city continued moving around them, indifferent to the miracle quietly unfolding on that cold pavement. Daniel watched as Leo finished the last bite of his meal. His small fingers clumsy but determined. Some of the hot chocolate stained his lip, and he licked it nervously, as if afraid someone might take it away. Amara gently wiped his mouth with the edge of her sleeve. "Slowly," she whispered. "It's not going anywhere." Daniel felt his throat tighten. How long had it been since? They felt safe enough to believe. That food wouldn't disappear. "How long have you been out here?" Daniel asked softly. Amara hesitated. She wasn't used to adults asking questions kindly. "A long time," she said. He nodded. He didn't push further. He knew pain did not reveal itself all at once. The wind blew again, colder now. Leo shivered violently. Daniel removed his expensive wool coat without thinking and placed it over Leo's shoulders. Amara's eyes widened. "No," she said quickly. "You'll be cold." Daniel smiled faintly. "I'll be fine." She stared at him, confused. People never gave without expecting something back. "Why are you helping us?" she asked carefully. Daniel paused. He could give many answers. Because he could afford it. Because it was the right thing. Because he felt guilty. But the truth was simpler. Because someone should have helped sooner. Amara didn't reply. She didn't fully trust hope yet. Daniel stood slowly. "Come with me," he said gently. Amara froze. Fear filled her chest instantly. "Where?" "To get warm." She shook her head. "We can't leave here." "Why not?" She looked at Leo. "This is where we live." The words hit Daniel harder than any accusation. This pavement. This street lamp. This cold ground. This was their home. He crouched down again so his eyes were level with hers. "You deserve better than this," he said quietly. Amara didn't respond, because no one had ever told her that before. Not once. "Do you trust me?" Daniel asked. She didn't answer immediately. Trust wasn't something she gave easily. Trust was dangerous. Trust got you hurt. But she looked at Leo. He looked back at her with tired, hopeful eyes. He was cold. He was hungry. He needed more than she could give him alone. She looked back at Daniel. His eyes didn't look cruel. They looked broken, like hers. She nodded once. Daniel stood and extended his hand. Amara stared at it. It was clean, strong, safe. Slowly, cautiously, she took it. Leo held her other hand tightly. Daniel led them toward the black car. His driver opened the door, stunned into silence. Amara hesitated before stepping in. She had never been inside a car like this. The seats were soft. The air was warm. Leo's eyes widened. "It's warm," he whispered. Daniel's chest ached. Yes, it was warm. Something so simple. Something every child deserved. As the car began to move, Amara watched the street through the window. Their street. Their cold street. For a moment, fear returned. What if this was temporary? What if it disappeared? Daniel seemed to sense her thoughts. "You're safe," he said gently. 2 words. Safe. Amara held onto them like a lifeline. For the first time in months, Leo fell asleep peacefully, his head resting against her shoulder. Daniel watched him carefully. He remembered holding his own son like that. He had thought he would never feel that again. Yet here he was. Life had brought him 2 broken children. And somehow, they were healing him too. The car stopped in front of a tall building. Amara stared up at it, overwhelmed. "Where are we?" she asked. Daniel looked at her. "Home," he said quietly. She didn't know it yet. But this was the beginning of everything. Not rescue. Not charity. Family. The doors opened into a world Amara had never imagined. Warm light filled the space. Soft carpets covered the floor. The air smelled clean, like soap and something sweet she couldn't name. She hesitated at the entrance. Leo clung to her hand. "It's okay," Daniel said gently. They stepped inside. A kind woman named Margaret, the housekeeper, approached slowly. Her eyes softened immediately when she saw the children. "Oh my," she whispered. Daniel spoke quietly. "They're staying with us." Us. Amara noticed that word. Margaret smiled warmly. "Welcome," she said. "Not you can stay. Welcome." She led them to a bathroom. The bathtub filled with warm water. Amara stared at it in disbelief. She couldn't remember the last time she had bathed properly. Leo dipped his fingers into the water and gasped. "It's warm." He laughed. It was a small sound, but it filled the entire room. Amara helped him bathe first. She washed his hair gently, careful not to hurt him. Daniel watched from the doorway, his heart breaking and healing at the same time. This little girl had carried responsibilities no child should carry. Afterward, Margaret brought clean clothes. Soft clothes. Warm clothes. Leo smiled shyly. Amara ran her fingers over the fabric, amazed. That night, they ate dinner at a real table. Leo fell asleep halfway through, his body finally surrendering to safety. Daniel carried him carefully to a bedroom. He tucked him into the bed. Leo didn't wake up. He trusted it. He trusted this place. Daniel turned to Amara. "You can sleep too," he said. She hesitated. "What if we have to leave?" The question cut deep. Daniel knelt beside her. "You don't." She searched his face. "Promise." His voice broke slightly. "I promise." She nodded slowly. That night, Amara slept in a bed for the first time in years. She didn't curl up in fear. She didn't wake up at every sound. She slept. And Daniel sat outside their room long after they fell asleep. For the first time in 10 years, his house didn't feel empty. It felt alive. Weeks passed. Leo grew stronger. Amara smiled more. She laughed sometimes. Daniel learned their favorite foods, their favorite stories, their fears, and they learned his. One night, Leo asked softly, Will you leave us? Daniel's heart shattered. No, he said. He meant it. Because they hadn't just entered his home. They had entered his heart. Months later, in a courtroom, Daniel stood beside them. Not as a billionaire. As a father. The judge smiled gently. Do you understand what this means? She asked Amara. Amara nodded. It meant she wasn't invisible anymore. It meant Leo wasn't alone. It meant they had a home. Forever. Daniel signed the papers. Leo hugged him tightly. Amara followed. And for the first time in all their lives, none of them were alone. Because sometimes, family isn't found in blood. Sometimes, family is found in a single sentence on a cold street. This boy lives in the street with me. And sometimes, that sentence saves everyone.